This is apropos. Impeached by Parliament and suspended from office, he's plunged South Korea into uncharted political territory. President Yoon Yeol remains holed up in his official residence, surrounded by hundreds of guards, as investigators ask for more time to enforce his detention. They're seeking a fresh arrest warrant after the original one expired this Monday. With the latest on the political crisis, here's Yinka Oyetade.
Anti-corruption investigators in Korea are not giving up. The deadline for an arrest warrant against the country's impeached president, Yoon Yeol, may now have come and gone, but hours before it expired at midnight local time on Monday, investigators requested an extension from the Seoul Western District Court. It's unclear if they will succeed, but they are optimistic. The deputy director of the Corruption Investigation Office telling reporters on Monday the likelihood for the court to not grant an extension is very low. It's the latest flashpoint in a standoff that has lasted weeks now, since the initial arrest warrant was issued after Yoon's short-lived declaration of martial law last month. On Friday, investigators were forced to retreat after trying to arrest Yoon for 6 hours, outnumbered by a team of 200 elite soldiers and Yoon's bodyguards who barred the entrance to the impeached leader's home. His lawyers have repeatedly called the warrant unlawful and illegal. On Sunday, a court in Seoul disagreed and rejected Yoon's challenge. The surroundings of Yoon's compound has also been the scene of dueling protests for days. Tens of thousands of people braving freezing temperatures, either calling for the arrest or opposing it.
It's inhumane of him to be resisting arrest from his warm residence while people are braving the cold. He needs to show his face and get arrested as soon as possible.
Some people say that as long as the president is arrested, as long as he steps down, everything will be solved. I think this is wrong, so I want to stand out and show my support.
Investigators not only want an extension, but they're also calling for police to take over efforts to detain President Yoon Yeol. If they succeed, the impeached leader will be the first ever sitting president to be arrested in South Korea's history.
This is the subject for tonight's apropos. As we know, he's been impeached by Parliament, suspended from office. Yoon Yeol remaining holed up in his official residence. Investigators had tried to arrest him last Friday. That led to a standoff lasting about 6 hours outside the presidential palace. Since then, he remains holed up there. Investigators had a warrant seeking his arrest. That expired at around 3 o'clock today, local time. And they have since then sought a fresh arrest warrant. The original one expired earlier this afternoon. As we say, the country plunged into an unprecedented political crisis. That standoff continuing outside the presidential office. Questions being asked as to why security guards there aren't moving in to detain the president. Questions also being asked about what exactly they are being ordered to do by the sitting president. So that fresh arrest warrant, as I say, is being sought by investigators. At this point, it's not clear whether or not the arrest warrant, the fresh arrest warrant, has been agreed to by judges there. But the crisis really plunging the country into an unprecedented political crisis. Questions too being asked about what the future exactly holds for President Yoon, impeached as he is and suspended from office. Well, to discuss, we're joined now by Alessio Patalano, a professor of war and strategy in East Asia at King's College London. Good to have you with us on the programme, Alessio. Thanks for joining us this evening. So firstly, why exactly is it proving so difficult, if not impossible up until this point, to detain the South Korean president?
I think the answer in part is exactly what you said earlier, hitting the nail on the head, as it were. We are in uncharted political and, above all, legal territory when it comes to South Korea, because the president, in principle, cannot be prosecuted for forms of crimes unless it is treason to the country, which is one of the options that has been considered. But at the same time, what we know for sure is that the impeachment, which would be the fastest way to remove the president from office is still being considered, and the courts have asked the time to rule on this. So in this ambiguous legal space, the president is weaponizing the constitution in his own favor, and he's literally retrenched himself, entrenched into his residence, and he's trying to hold on to power, hoping that the court will come back with a negative position on the matter of the impeachment, which, as time progresses and the political pressure continues to escalate, is very unlikely not to happen.
And as we say, Alessio, lots of questions being asked about what exactly has been happening inside that building. When it comes to the security team, who exactly are they taking orders from at this point? What orders are they likely to have been given, and why are they remaining so loyal to Yoon?
Well, they're not necessarily loyal to Yoon himself, but they're loyal to the office. They're loyal to the president. The role of the presidential security guard is to protect the president. And so, as things stand, in lack of a clear legal mandate that removes the power from the president, their default position is to continue to protect him, which creates this absolutely almost surreal, dystopic sort of reality, if you want, in which, on the one hand, you have the political dynamics in the Korean parliament, in which there is an enormous amount of pressure mounting, the opposition party calling for the president to be removed and impeachment to be confirmed, people protesting outside the house. But on the other, you have the guard of the president that stands literally guard outside the gates, preventing things from going any other direction until some sort of legal clarity is reached.
And are there fears that tensions could spill over into actual violence there outside the presidential palace? What's actually happening there on the ground between protesters on one side and security staff on the other?
So I think at the moment you have a clear sense of, I mean, on the one hand, we should probably emphasize that this is a moment to celebrate democracy in the sense that people are taking up to the streets. They are protesting against a situation that they feel that politically is wrong, but so far it seems to be that everything is being conducted in a very sort of in a fashion that is compliant with civic manifestation of protests. So as things stand, things will continue to remain particularly heated. There will be a lot of discontent. People will probably shout. They will probably be there to manifest their deep-seated dissent for the situation, but they will look back to their elected politicians to find an answer to the current deadlock.
But how long can all of this drag out, Alessio? The Constitutional Court, it has up to 180 days to determine whether to dismiss Yoon as president or to reinstate him.
No, you're absolutely right. This is the critical question. Here, the courts have the ultimate word, if you want. And I think the pressure is mounting also on them to come up with the solution. The problem is, of course, that whichever direction they may well go, they know that they will represent constitutional president. It should also be said that except for the previous president, no other president since the founding of South Korea has not been in one way or another deposed out of legal procedures or because of a coup or because it was assassinated. So put it this way, being a president of South Korea is not an easy job. And at the moment, what we see is a court that is called upon to set a new precedent that might be held as a point of reference in the future. For this reason, perhaps they take a little bit more time. But I would not imagine that will take the entire length of the given time for them to come to a decision.
And if Yoon is arrested, what happens then? Is it likely that he's going to answer questions, given the length that all of this has dragged out up until this point? What will actually happen if he is taken into custody?
Well, once the impeachment procedure is confirmed, and then you enter a different type of phase, because then if it is removed from power, then legal procedures will kick in. Once he's removed as a president, then like President Park before him, will be a sort of investigations that will be conducted, and then decisions will be taken on how to take action. At the moment, it will depend also the impeachment upon what kind of legal foundation is set forth. What I think is going to be really interesting is that one is deposed the current situation in which the prime minister is de facto acting on behalf of the president. We've seen him standing next to Blinken just yesterday. and performing, if you want, the highest level of functions of governance in South Korea at the moment. What will happen is we'll probably soon get into an election, and that will enter in a very interesting space, because obviously the opposition party has had very different political platform and manifesto from the current president. And so we might very well expect a significant amount of change politically in South Korea, regardless of how the legal history of the current president ends up being.
And currently, polls suggest that most people in South Korea, they agree that the president shouldn't have tried to impose martial law, but they appear divided on how exactly he should be held accountable.
Absolutely. And again, this goes back to the fact that from a legal perspective, a president is, if you want, is almost above the law during the time it serves. He serves in his position. But of course, here the question is whether to what extent calling upon martial law was actually an act of treason towards the country. That would set completely differently the political and legal context and the problem that he would face. And so in this respect, I think there's a considerable amount of division on how to deal with this fact. That being said, though, polls also suggest that from a political perspective, both him as a political person as well as his party, they are trailing with very low numbers of approval rates. So regardless of how you deal with the president based on the kind of legal conclusions that it's reached in terms of what is done wrong, and the political sort of implications of that are unlikely to be any different from a decisive shift towards the opposition party in the next election.
Alessio, we'll have to leave it there for now, but thank you so much for being with us this evening. That is Alessio Patalano, Professor of War and Strategy in East Asia at King's College, London. Thank you so much for your time. Well, that is it from us for now. Up next here on France 24, it's Eye on Africa.